Hello and welcome to the show. I am here on GTA 5 for some more downhill chaos with the Lowriders, starting today with the Tornado. It can certainly bounce up really rather high into the air, and it is quite easily capable of rolling itself over. A few cars can just about roll themselves over. The Tornado is really very keen to fling itself onto its side. And I also love how the hikers just don't pay any attention until they're right on top of it, and then even then, only one of them actually notices, you know, there is a car stuck on its side at the top of the mountain, and then they only bother to stop and take a picture, so I decide they should be run over. I am also using, there's a really cool mod somebody has made that turned Downhill Chaos into a proper game mode. I'll put a link in the description so you can download it. Makes filming this a hell of a lot easier, which is really good, so thank you very much for the mod. On this opening run, things went a little bit wrong. I tried to carry too much speed over a jump. I was a little too far to the left, and we went tumbling off the mountain. Quite surprised to see a car explode in that manner. Normally, it's with a sort of a high-speed collision with the rear that causes problems. That was not the case on that opening one. It wasn't actually the largest of crashes either. Next attempt, things didn't go that much better. Running a little bit wide. This car absolutely loves to tumble. Once it starts going, it does not want to stop rolling, which can lead to some very interesting crashes. This time around, I got a little bit lucky and got it quite under control early. Now, one of the big issues with this car, not quite as bad as the Hummer last time out, but the brakes aren't good. It was also the first vehicle I'd ever seen to have problems with the front being so low. I was actually slightly too far to the right. Never had it happen to a vehicle before, but the front of the car got caught on the ground. So yeah, first vehicle to ever have those sort of problems. The main problem, though, was the brakes. It doesn't get slowed down. It really doesn't get slowed down. I ran a tad wide and was never going to be able to catch it. And now we do start to see a little bit of the tumbling. There are bits of bodywork flying everywhere. I'm trying to slow it down here, but the brakes are just completely and utterly ineffective. A little bit better than the Hummers, certainly, but still not particularly good. It will just about eventually get stopped, but yeah, it doesn't really slow down very well. So that is something to be aware of as I drive it through these next corners. I turned it a tad too soon. Clipped, or is the tiniest of clipped off a rock as well. We went for a huge, spectacular tumble. That one, I was quite impressed with that as a crash, but it was yeah, slightly strange, almost angle. Doesn't normally have cars rolling, and again, the Tornado goes for a flip. That time landing quite neatly, going backwards into a tree, but landing quite neatly from all of the chaos across the high-speed jump. I actually land so heavily on the front that we don't have a problem on the landing, except for I get a little too much oversteer and was kind of twitched the car from side to side, and in doing that, the back end, I think, got lifted up ever so slightly over a bump. Then we get pinged off a tree. There's a serious force off of that tree. To fling us sideways, stuck on its roof, and then comes to a rest and is now completely wedged. It won't roll over far enough to get it back upwards. It won't roll the other way. So, yeah, the Tornado is stuck on its roof. If it starts rolling, it is, yeah, quite impressive. Impressive a crash. Took a little bit to get the hang of this car, most definitely, because of the brakes, mainly. The actual Lowrider-esque part was not too much of a problem. You saw that it did get a little caught up the first corner once. I never had it happen again, though, and the rear could... We have seen this from a few cars. The rear could bounce up off the ground if it went over something incredibly low, but on the most part, it wasn't too affected by that around the course. It was the brakes that were the big concern. You had to make sure that you gave yourself plenty of time to get the car slowed down. The Tornado is not a particularly fast, or the normal Tornado is not a particularly fast car, probably one of the slowest vehicles on the game. Certainly the custom version essentially does feel better. It's, yeah, feels like it is a slightly faster vehicle, and you know, around the turns it's really not too bad. Have got to watch out a little bit. It is possible to have the rear end slide around, but it tends not to. On the most part, is relatively savable as well. If you start seeing it going sideways early enough, it's not too bad a thing to save really on here. The front of the car was getting kind of crashed into the floor on the high-speed jump. It sort of helped in that it killed a lot of the speed as well, so we didn't have too much flying off into the scenery. We did get a massive flick sideways from the bushes, but we weren't really going fast enough for it to cause any major problems. It is around the final turn and across the line for the tornado, and we have a little time come up in the bottom of the screen as well. Yeah, brakes are the big issue really for this car. I think it's quite a cool lowrider to have, and it's certainly it's nicer to drive the lowrider version than the sort of the normal version of the tornado. But yeah, trying to get this car slowed down for some of the turns was a real pain. So I back it up here and park it up to have a little bit play around with the hydraulics. I think the hydraulics are probably the most impressive I've seen with the tornado. It really does bounce around quite nicely. I was trying to see if I could roll the car down the hill. It was getting close. It almost went, and physics got a little unhappy and pinged it back up onto its wheels. But next time we got it. There we go. So yes, you can roll a tornado down a hill using the hydraulics to actually get 2.5 rolls out of the tornado. Actually, I was pretty happy with that one, and until that it had made its way cleanly down the course. Up next we have got the Slamvan. This is my favourite of the lowriders. I have one in the Xbox Online version, very similar to this. I love this livery on the vehicle. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I really do quite like the Slamvan lowrider. However, I do know the issues with the Slamvan. They are notoriously awful under braking. And I was suspecting we were going to have a similar problem with the custom version. Decent enough acceleration from this vehicle. Again, I think it is a slight improvement perhaps over the standard one. But the big concern is going to be trying to slow the vehicle down, trying to get it stopped from what are, half decent speeds. It's up to sort of 60, 67 or so miles an hour down there. So yeah, it has got some decent straight line speed, and then when it comes to a corner, it's a little bit scary and a little bit panicky. In the first run, I just overdid things ever so slightly. Now we're weaving our way towards the first jump here. Just about get everything under control. I don't run too wide, but the bumps were enough to put the vehicle sideways, and yeah, kind of had to jump on the brakes in the hope of not spinning that one. First corner, didn't quite get it slowed down in time. That put me out of position, jumped across the rock, and now we start with another tumble. Much like the tornado, the Slamvan does do a pretty damn good job of rolling, twisting, and tumbling its way if something goes a little bit wrong. Yeah, this does like a good tumble around the course as well. This part was a real pain. It was a real pain getting it right through here. So this attempt, I actually clipped the little bush on the inside. It was enough to tip the vehicle sideways, and in doing so, put me out of position for the next part. And well, you see what's happening. We're at sort of 80, 90 miles an hour, tumbling down a mountain. Somehow, I was waiting for that to explode. I was sure that was going to explode. The way that we were kind of rolling it hit the ground on its wheels, and it was just long enough to, yeah, kind of break an impact so we didn't explode. Trying to avoid the bush, I then ran wide on the next attempt. The car got unhappy, bouncing off the floor. I did manage to get it all under control, only to hit a bump and get a huge amount of oversteer, and then we start trying to climb a solid rock face. Not a particularly good idea. Instant karma as I clatter a hiker, get a cougar stuck under the wheel that just drags my car ever so slightly to the left. You see that as soon as I hit the animal, it yeah, drags the Slamvan to the left into some bushes, and we went round in a circle as well. Yeah, the hikers are still very much instant karma if you manage to run one over. Again, it took some time to get the hang of the Slamvan. I think it is perhaps a slightly faster vehicle than the Tornado. As I said, half decent speeds up to here. Okay, it's not quite the 90 miles an hour that we're seeing from the Formula 1 cars and from the motorbikes, but considering what it is, it's, really not too bad. But again, we've got to try and get it slowed down for these corners. Lots of braking very, very early from this car to just make it around the course full stop. This was the big big problem zone up here, making sure that you get on the brakes early. It's tempting to try and push your luck through there, but yeah, you can't get away with it, and you're more than likely to go soaring off down the cliff, making sure not to spin as well as we come across the bumps down here. And the heavens decide to open just for good measure halfway down this run. I don't think it really made any difference. I don't think it quite got wet enough to actually affect the vehicles as we come across the high-speed jump. No problems on the landing there. I mean, this is a really rather low vehicle, the Slamvan. It is very, very low to the ground, but the ride height never threw up any real issues. It was the brakes and its tendency to oversteer if it hit a bump awkwardly that were the big problems for this vehicle. Just one more turn to go in the Slamvan, and is safely around there and launched across the line with a bit of a spin and not quite stopped in time as we fall over the other side. And well, it's on its roof, as lots of my vehicles do tend to to end up. It fared a little bit better than I kind of feared. It might be utterly shocking and awful down here, and it wasn't completely. I love this vehicle because it looks fantastic, not that it drives fantastic. And yeah, it's not the easiest vehicle to drive with. It's generally terrible brakes, not particularly good turning and so on. But it fared okay down chiliad. The low ride height that I thought might cause it trouble, it really, really didn't. So yeah, it made its way down the course just about okay, I think, is what we're going to go with. The hydraulics on this nowhere near as impressive as the Tornado. Finally, the sky's clear. We have got the Virgo. Now, the Lowrider version of this does change the car a fair amount. It changes the entire front end, so this is much more of a classic vehicle. I'm not even sure if it doesn't change the back as well. It's quite a drastic transformation on this car. I absolutely love this livery as well. I think it's a fantastic livery on the car. Now, this was a nice change to drive. It actually has proper brakes, which is really rather good. Really rather good to have proper brakes in a car tackling this course. They are a rather important part of things on such a narrow course. Interestingly, not as fast as the Slamvan in a straight line, but much nicer through the turns, although things do get a little bit wrong as slightly out of position, a little bit of a bump, and it's all it's going to take to have a big oversteer moment with this vehicle. Again, front end pretty much scraping on the floor. Aside from visually, though, yeah, I didn't actually have any problems with the cars scraping. Tried to carry too much speed coming down this little exit road, and that was enough to tip it up on its side. It didn't quite go over, but we go for many rotations rather than rolls this time out. I just about get it under control. A little bit of a tap on a tree as we went past. This wasn't quite as keen to roll over as the other two vehicles. You know, things could go a little bit wrong with it, but on the most part, it was a much easier car to drive. That was about the only really odd accident I had. Tend not to get that sort of a crash there. If the car bounces up, it's normally the front bouncing up. This one kind of pinged off the rear and launched it for a really rather large roll. I can't say I've ever had a car do that. So trying to avoid the hiker karma, I avoided the hikers, but in doing so, ran a wheel off the edge of the cliff. Some cars can get away with it, a lowrider probably not, and sure enough, that caught the back of the vehicle. And again, we fired it up into the air, and some big hits on the hillside there before the car can get under control again. You can see how much easier this thing is to get slowed down. When it's going wildly off the mountain, it can actually get stopped. Carried a lot of speed over the high-speed jump and was just about making it down here. Asked a little too much of the Virgo. Well, that could have gone a lot worse. That's kind of a testament to this vehicle being a pretty decent vehicle. That could have gone a lot worse. In the end, it was a relatively tame crash from firing it at a huge amount of speed down that section. It was much easier to drive, this vehicle. I'm glad that I saved this one until the end, because it was so much nicer to drive than the other cars down here. It actually had pretty damn good brakes. It got turned very nicely. We had no real handling complaints from this. It's not the fastest vehicle, certainly. It's not the fastest accelerating car. We've seen that the Slamvan is quicker than this when it comes to accelerating, but it is relatively nice to drive around this course. You can chuck it around the hairpin. It'll be fine. You don't have to be panicking and worrying about the brakes down here. I mean, yes, you do still have to worry about getting it stopped. It's easy to fire a car off this part of the course. Probably one of the places we see a lot of accidents, possibly the most, down at that particular corner. But it's much easier to judge it right with this vehicle. You did see it braked loose into oversteer kind of once down here. Provided you're not being a moron with the car and you've not got everything completely wrong across the jump, wasn't going to be a problem with this vehicle. Up towards the high-speed jump, can actually take it nice flat and level across there. It doesn't plough the nose into the floor, keeps up its momentum quite nicely, and the back end doesn't fire it up into the air, which is always good. Up towards the second to last corner is a little bumpy around there. In fact, it's horribly bumpy around there. Doesn't really phase Virgo around the final turn with a little bit of a slide in between the mountain bikers, and it is across the line, and then we go for a tumble. Everything had to roll at some point on this final ride. I think everything rolled across the line for their final. Maybe the Tornado didn't, but yeah, I like this car. I thought it was a really rather decent vehicle. It lacked some power, some acceleration, and so on. But I think it's a great looking car. The livery is fantastic, absolutely perfect for me, and it's a nice handling vehicle. Unfortunately, no photo bombing of mountain bikers this time around. A little bit disappointing that they decided to bugger off over there. So it was back to playing with hydraulics. Could we fire the Virgo down the hill? Took a little bit more to get this car. It wasn't quite as easy to sort of get this on its side as it was with the Tornado. Unfortunately, it got close, but physics didn't really quite like me trying to roll it over. Got very close on that one. And then the car sort of shuffled across a little bit, and then we were on a slope, and then Lowrider hydraulics got very... He didn't really know what to do at this point. It got very angry and very confused. So, yeah, the Virgo wins that one. Couldn't roll it down the mountain. Go for a little jump. It's not quite as impressive as the Tornado for the jumpings. On to the times, and unsurprisingly, it was the Virgo that went fastest to 130.8. Puts it in a relatively crowded area of the table. It beats the Moonbeam. The Moonbeam Lowrider was quite an impressively fast vehicle. So yeah, for the Virgo to go quicker, the only Lowrider that's beat it is the Sabre Turbo. It's not that far down on the Volvo S60, so not bad for a Lowrider. The Slamvan equally, despite its shocking brakes, the 32.5 will put it into 89th place. It's only a tenth of a second down on the Dodge Challenger. Sorry, it beats the Faction Lowrider, beats the Hakumi, the BMW M6. Considering the awful brake, that Slamvan is not bad. It's certainly got plenty of acceleration, and not too bad through the turns. Just, it's really, yeah, got to brake so early for the corners that let it down. And the Tornado is down in 103rd place, 135.1, puts it with the DeLorean. It does beat a Batmobile. That thing was a real pain to drive down the course. It's a tenth of a second down on the Faction Donk. It's the brakes let the Tornado down, and then they do let the Slamvan down as well, because the Tornado doesn't have the power to make up for it in the same way. So, yeah, there we go. That is it for this video. As ever, I will put links to all of the mods that I have used in the description, and I highly recommend you check out the Downhill Chaos game mode. It is, yeah, good fun to have sort of a proper timer, and doing very quick, easy restarts is lovely. Makes this a hell of a lot easier for me to film. But that's it from me for today. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.